until he saw the woman's mole on her chest and the C-section scar. The CEO then realized his wife, who had died 13 years ago, was still alive, but he had witnessed his wife being killed by a car right in front of him. Seeing this, his wife revealed the truth from that time. 13 years ago, he had just dropped off his son and daughter at kindergarten. Then, a car hit and killed him on the spot. After her death, she ended up in a void space, and she even saw what happened 13 years later. Her husband died because of his grief over her death. Their daughter drowned after being pushed into water by her boyfriend. Even their obedient son was sentenced to death for a crime. In other words, the whole family perished 13 years later, while the CEO was honoring his deceased wife 13 years later. Suddenly, a woman fell from the sky, landing heavily on him. When the woman saw her husband, she was overjoyed. However, the CEO was terrified. After all, his wife had been dead for 13 years. Staring at his wife's portrait, the woman couldn't believe she had been reborn into the future. She quickly grabbed his hand and told him she was his wife, but the husband thought she had intentionally disguised herself to look like his wife to get close to him. He immediately threw her out, but the woman knew she couldn't leave. Heaven had given her a second chance to change her family's tragic fate. The only way to do so was to make her husband believe she was his wife. Soon, the CEO was woken up from his nap by a call from his mother. She asked how his date with the girl had gone. He misunderstood and thought the woman who had undergone surgery was the match his mother had arranged for him. He told her the girl had been kicked out. His mother was furious. To make him forget his deceased daughter-in-law, she ordered him to meet the girl again at a French restaurant at 5 in the afternoon. Reluctantly, the CEO agreed. Just then, a familiar voice sounded. It turned out the girl had been waiting outside, trying to prove her identity. She then revealed a little secret between them. She said the CEO had always liked her on top. The CEO was shocked and couldn't speak. How could there be such an unashamed person in the world? But the CEO thought his mother must have told her. So, he impatiently told her to talk about it at the French restaurant that evening. The woman was confused. She had no idea what French restaurant he was talking about. But to prove she was his wife, she stumbled into the French restaurant. By now, the CEO was completely convinced she was the woman his mother had arranged for him to meet. To make sure she stopped bothering him, he threw $2 million at her, asking her to return her face to its original state. But when the woman saw her husband still didn't believe her, she had no choice but to use a scientific method. That was to get DNA testing with her husband's hair and their son's. But the CEO didn't even look and just threw the hair on the floor. After all, who would believe something as absurd as being resurrected after 13 years? With that, he turned and left without looking back. The woman was angry but still accepted the $2 million. After all, her husband's money was her money. Meanwhile, as the CEO stepped outside, he bumped into a stunning woman walking toward him. After a brief introduction, he learned she was the match his mother had arranged for him. That evening, the woman, having nowhere to go, saw a young man fighting with a group of thugs. Being someone who liked to meddle, he immediately stepped in to stop it. Using the excuse of calling the police, he successfully scared off the thugs. But the woman didn't realize the rich second-generation man in front of her was her obedient son from 13 years ago. However, her rebellious son didn't recognize her. He scolded her for interfering, saying he could take on 10 of them by himself. Seeing how ungrateful the rich second generation was, she waved her hand, calling the thugs back. The thugs immediately came back with weapons and beat the rich second-generation man badly. Later, the woman went to her hotel and found the room her husband had kept for her for the past 13 years. Sure enough, he had preserved her fingerprints during all this time. But just as she was about to rest, she heard unpleasant sounds from the next room. To get some peace, she knocked on the door, only to find the person inside was the wealthy second-generation man who had just been beaten. Soon, he realized that this was the room his father had kept for his mother. He immediately came next door and asked how she got in. But the mother didn't recognize her son and didn't want to deal with him. Seeing how obnoxious the woman was, and how similar she looked to his mother, he immediately suspected she was a replacement or a new lover his father had brought in. Furious, the woman kicked the rich second-generation man, not knowing that her kick almost led to her never having grandchildren. Soon, the CEO received a call from his son. He asked why his father let another woman impersonate his mother. The CEO thought his son was just causing trouble again. After all, that room was only for him and his deceased wife. But he still went to the hotel to see what was going on. When his son saw him, he got even angrier. He warned his father that if he let this woman replace his mother, he would never recognize him as his father again. When the father entered the room, he saw the woman inside. He immediately lost his temper. He thought she must have entered the room through illegal means. To make the CEO believe her, the woman took off her coat. The moment he saw the mole, the CEO froze. Though shocked, the CEO still didn't believe such an absurd thing as being resurrected. He thought she had not only had plastic surgery but also made a scar and mole to intentionally get close to him. With no other choice, the woman suggested they do a paternity test. If the DNA proved she wasn't his wife, she would disappear immediately. To get rid of the woman, the CEO agreed. Soon, the CEO, with his son's hair and the woman, went to the hospital for a DNA test. The woman, growing increasingly angry, confidently told him to prepare to apologize once the results came out. The CEO, equally confident, told her that if the results were wrong, she better have her face fixed again. The woman scoffed. Soon, the report came out. The woman quickly grabbed the DNA report. At that moment, she had already planned how to punish her husband. However, when she saw the report, she froze. It showed she had no genetic relationship with her son. This made her question whether her son had been switched at the hospital when he was born. But her son looked so much like her, it couldn't have been a mistake. So the only explanation was that the hair wasn't her son's. But the CEO didn't believe this. He thought this was all just her reason to get close to him. With that, he grabbed her and insisted they go to the plastic surgery clinic to fix her face. The woman knew no matter what she said, her husband wouldn't believe her. So she bit him hard and ran away. The CEO thought the woman would never bother him again. But when he returned home, he realized the hair indeed wasn't his son's. An hour earlier, the rich second generation had heard his father tell the butler to get his hair for the DNA test. The son thought his father was enchanted by an outsider. He even doubted he wasn't his real son. To prank both of them, he swapped his hair with the butler's. Once the CEO learned the truth, he realized the woman hadn't lied to him. But soon, he was relieved. Even if the woman hadn't lied, she couldn't possibly be his deceased wife. However, the woman wasn't giving up. To prove she was his late wife, she went to his son's school to get a strand of hair herself. The rich second generation saw her and looked annoyed, asking why she was there. But the woman couldn't care less and just wanted to find her son. The rich second generation, thinking she was trying to marry his father, lied and said her son was his classmate. The woman immediately smiled and asked him to take her to find her son. Just as the rich second generation was about to get revenge on this woman, his girlfriend walked out of the school. It was then that the woman realized the bastard who had been messing with her all this time was her own son.